At 6:12 a.m., a shriek like a tea kettle exploded across Mulberry Trace. I looked up from my coffee to see the HOA president, Beverly Grafton, standing on my front lawn, transformed into a walking sunset. Neon magenta dust plumed off her cardigan like a Vegas fog machine. A second later, 3 sprinklers kicked on, turning her into a Jackson Pollock painting come to life. The look of pure shock on her face was worth every single complaint she'd ever filed against me, and trust me, there had been many. My name is Ian Delaney, software guy, quiet on purpose. I moved to Mulberry Trace in Cedar Willows because the listing bragged about a peaceful cul-de-sac and low traffic for joggers and deer. The ad forgot to mention the HOA president with binoculars who treated the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. Beverly introduced herself the first day by complaining my mailbox lacked whimsy and my lawn smelled like non-compliance, whatever that meant. I waved politely, retreated inside, and practiced a religion I like to call leave me be. I thought keeping to myself would be enough. I thought wrong. Beverly escalated her campaign against me like a discount Bond villain with too much time on her hands. It started small, with passive-aggressive notes tucked under my windshield wipers about the angle of my garbage cans. Then things got weird. She taped a Grass Heights citation emergency to my door at 2 a.m. I know the exact time because my doorbell camera caught her creeping across my porch in her bathrobe and slippers, measuring tape in hand. The citation claimed my grass was 0.2 inches above regulation height. 0.2 inches. A week later, I caught her on my security camera again. This time, she had somehow slipped through my side gate to measure my garden gnome with a ruler. In the footage, you can actually hear her muttering to herself that he was smirking above code. She was talking about a ceramic gnome's facial expression violating HOA standards. That same afternoon, she circulated a Facebook post in the neighborhood group suggesting I was operating a clandestine weed nursery on my property. She meant dandelions. 3 dandelions that I hadn't gotten around to pulling yet. Then came the trespasses, morning, noon, and night, which she called routine compliance audits. She would pace my yard like a mall cop on a power trip, whispering notes to her clipboard about infractions only she could see. My outdoor thermometer was apparently mounted at an unapproved angle. My bird feeder attracted the wrong species of birds. My welcome mat was too welcoming, which she claimed might encourage solicitors. When I sent her a formal cease and desist letter drafted by a lawyer friend, her response was a handwritten note that said no one is above mulch law. She underlined mulch 3 times. The harassment continued for weeks. She would show up at 6 a.m. sharp to photograph my lawn from multiple angles. She measured the distance between my trash cans and the curb with a tape measure, claiming they were creating a public hazard by being 2 inches too far from regulation placement. She filed complaints about the color of my garden hose, saying hunter green clashed with the neighborhood aesthetic. She even tried to fine me for leaves that had blown onto my lawn from the neighbor's tree, insisting that accepting foreign debris was a violation of property standards. The last straw arrived when I found a pink notice of mandatory lawn conformity hearing inside my locked backyard. She had stapled it directly to my maple tree, leaving holes in the bark. The notice demanded I appear before the HOA board to explain my pattern of deliberate non-compliance. That's when I knew Beverly had crossed a line that even the most aggressive HOA president shouldn't cross. I spent that evening reviewing the HOA bylaws and state statutes, then invited Beverly via email to please stop committing what was textbook criminal trespass. She responded within minutes with a laughing emoji and the message that property lines are a social construct. So I called the city code office and my friend who's an attorney. I also took a trip to the party supply store and the hardware store. Strictly within my lot, I installed something festive. Harmless color powder mines. Think Holy Festival meets glitter bomb. Biodegradable, non-toxic powder deployed via pressure mats hidden under the mulch. Each one was loaded with food-grade colored powder that would burst in a small cloud when stepped on. No harm to anyone, but maximum fabulous results. I set them up in a pattern around my backyard, focusing on the areas where Beverly usually trespassed. The pressure plates were sensitive enough to trigger from an adult's weight but not from small animals or birds. I also made 2 important phone calls. The first was to Officer Juno Park from our community policing unit, who I invited to stop by my house the next morning around 6:15 for coffee and a discussion about trespassing laws. The second was to Elliot Grimm from the city's code compliance unit, who was very interested in my documentation of HOA overreach. Both agreed to be at my house bright and early. I set my alarm for 5:30 and made sure my cameras were fully charged. At dawn, right on schedule, Beverly slithered in through my gate for what she called a pre-audit audit. I watched from my kitchen window as she marched across my lawn with her clipboard, heading straight for my garden. A soft PFFFFFD sound erupted as the first mine went off, and a cloud of tangerine and fuchsia powder crowned her like a sunrise. She staggered backward in shock, her mouth open in a perfect O of surprise, and stepped directly onto another pad. Oh! A cerulean comet tail of powder exploded around her ankles. She shrieked and stumbled sideways, triggering a third mine that sent lime-green powder cascading over her shoulders. By the time she stormed to my porch to deliver what I'm sure would have been an epic lecture, she looked like she'd been attacked by a rainbow. That's when she met my two guests. Officer Juno Park stood there in full uniform, coffee mug in hand, trying very hard not to laugh. Elliot Grimm from the city's code compliance unit had his notepad out and was already writing. The doorbell cam caught everything in high definition, including Beverly, speckled like a confetti cannoli, admitting she might have stepped past the setback when Officer Park asked her directly if she had entered my property without permission. Officer Park blinked and said in a very calm voice, "Past the fence. You mean past the fence and onto private property." Beverly, still dripping purple powder from her hair, responded that the fence is more of a guideline. Both Officer Park and Elliot Grimm pulled out their pens at the exact same moment. Not mine, though. I just stood there sipping my coffee, trying to keep a straight face as Beverly realized she had just confessed to criminal trespass in front of a police officer and a city official. The HOA scheduled an emergency meeting that evening, presumably to crucify me with a monogrammed gavel. I came prepared. I brought printed photos of every single trespass, time-stamped and dated. I brought the video of Beverly breaching my gate not once, not twice, but 3 separate times in a single week. I brought a stack of state statutes highlighting the difference between HOA authority and criminal behavior. I also brought the piece de resistance, a high-resolution photograph of the notice she had stapled to my maple tree, with the staple holes clearly visible in the bark, like a smoking gun of her property damage. Elliot Grimm explained in calm municipal tones that trespassing is in fact a law, not a mulch law, and that HOA boards could face serious liability for endorsing illegal entry onto private property. Officer Park announced that a formal warning had been issued and a report was now on file with the police department. She then politely but firmly recommended that Beverly stop surveilling residents like an off-brand drone. When Beverly tried to pivot and claimed she was conducting safety inspections for the good of the community, I queued up the money shot on my laptop projector. There on the screen for everyone to see was Beverly at the exact moment the first powder pad went off. She emerged from the cloud like a Pride Parade piñata, her face frozen in shock, arms flailing, her usually perfect hair standing on end and dusted in hot pink. The room cracked. One board member snorted so hard he actually swallowed a cough drop and needed water. Another board member tried to disguise her laughter as a coughing fit. Even the usually stone-faced HOA attorney had to turn away to compose himself. The consequences arrived in rapid succession. Beverly was censured by the board in a unanimous vote and suspended from all enforcement duties for 6 months. The HOA's attorney strongly advised immediate policy rewrites, including requirements for written notice before any property inspections, a complete ban on entering gates or fenced areas, and absolutely no aesthetic measurements with rulers or any other instruments. A civil no trespass order was issued protecting my yard and my maple tree's dignity. The city fined Beverly personally $3,000 for multiple violations of trespassing ordinances, and she was required to complete 40 hours of community service specifically focused on property rights education. When the judge read out the fine amount, Beverly's face turned the exact same shade of magenta as the powder that had covered her that morning, and she shouted that this was a conspiracy against proper lawn maintenance standards.